Welcome back everybody to the Good Enough Homestead. Today we're going to be installing a cottage door. Come join us. So what I have to start off doing is get the total height of the door correct. It's about an inch too high, so I'm going to mark off a straight line here and use my track saw to cut the end off. So as you can see from this, the door is just a slat at this point. So I have to cut the holes for the door handle as well as the lock set for the door latch coming from the end of the door. I have to take into account the offset from the edge of the door handle, and the handle comes with a little template that you can use, so I'm just cutting that out, and I will tape that on the door to get my locations for the centers of both of those holes. Some of you astute watchers will notice that I've got the template in the wrong location. That crease on the paper is supposed to go on the top side, and luckily I figured it out before I do any damage to the door, so crisis averted there. It was at this moment right here where I knew my mistake and I stopped, luckily. All fixed. So at this point, I've been bitten in the butt too many times following directions on sizes of holes and it being wrong, so I got out my digital calipers, which are manual calipers at this point because the battery is dead, but still functions the same. So I'm just trying to figure out the perfect size hole to put in for the lock set. And none of my Forstner bits fit just right, so I broke out the trusty old spade bits that I've had for a while. I was able to find the perfect size. And with that hole cut, now I am moving on to the bigger hole for the door handle to go through. And I have a set of hole saws, and same as before, I'm just using the digital calipers / manual calipers to figure out the perfect size hole so that there's not a lot of slop in the fit and it's not too tight. When I get to this point, you'll notice I stop, and I'm going to be careful when you're trying to drill through something like this that you don't go all the way through from one side, because on the back side it'll chunk out and it won't be a clean cut. So I just make sure that the drill bit pokes through on the back side, and then I flip the door over and finish the cut from that side so that it's clean all the way through. As I'm doing the dry fit of the handle and the lock, it's throwing me off a little bit because there are two depth settings for the lock set itself, and I knew I needed the deeper setting, but it wasn't allowing it to go in far enough, and then I realized that it was because I needed to mortise out a little bit into the door for the lock set to sit, which would give it enough clearance to lock everything together. All I'm doing here is creating a recess for that lock to fit into so that it can sit back in there far enough to attach to the door handle portion correctly. And now that that's done, we are moving on to the mortises for the hinges. And this is a solid core door, so it needs 3 hinges instead of 2. So I had copied the measurements from the old door jam since we're reusing that. And then for the third hinge in the middle, I just went direct center of the door. And at this point, I'm just laying out where the hinges will go, marking the outline of them, and marking the depth that it needs to go so that it sits flush with the end, and I'll get chiseling away again. I used the hammer and chisel on the first one, and it was very inefficient, so I broke out the little palm router for the next two. I just set the depth of the cutting bit so that it's the same depth as the hinge itself, so it'll sit flush again. And I'm cleaning up the first one to make sure that's completely flat and level at the correct depth. And then I'll move on to the next two. You guys saw that, right? So what I've done here is I marked a line at the very center of the door, and there's a screw hole in the very center of the hinge. So I'm just lining that center line up on the hinge with the center line up on the door, and drawing my hinge outline from there. And then I know I'll have my middle hinge in the very center of the door. Alright, so now obviously we moved inside, and I'm having to cut that third mortise on the door jamb itself, since the old door only had two. Oops, made a little slip there. I don't know if you saw that or not. I'm just doing this last mortise. I don't know if you can tell or not, but this chisel was super dull and I didn't realize it. It's not really digging in, really cutting, it's kind of just chunking it out, which is not really that great. So once I switch over to the other chisel, you'll notice it gets a lot smoother and a lot cleaner. But once we're done with this part, we'll hang it and be about done.
bird on a tree. I'm just sitting here. I got time, it's clear to see. From up here, the world seems small. We can sit together. It's so beautiful, you and me. We meant to be in the great outdoors, forever free.
And here we have another finished section of our cottage transformation. And I just want to take a minute to thank you guys so much for stopping by. And please think about liking and subscribing for more content like this. Thank you.